I guess this chat is mostly driven by how a relationship between entrepreneur and their investors should be. A little bit. I want to talk a little bit about my story and what type of entrepreneurs Marlon is looking for, and some of the things that we need to do as Black people and as entrepreneurs to move kind of forward in whatever we're working on. And just give type of tips and clues, I guess, on how to do that. So, I guess we'll get started. A little bit about me. My name is Daricus, of course. I am the CEO of StoreCash. I actually started entrepreneurship when I was 12. As I was growing up, I have a twin brother, and at 12, we came home one day and everything in our house was gone. Because my father, he had a drug addiction, and he would take things in our house to fill his drug addiction. So at this time, it was a unique time because my mom, she was in the military, and she was off on a military trip to provide for the family, right? So me and my twin brother, we said, hey, we're gonna help our mom. So we got our bicycles, and a lawnmower from our friend, and we started mowing lawns. The summer had just started. By the end of the summer, we did like $3,800, and we bought all our school clothes, different things like that. And, the next summer, we did the same thing, did around about 5,000 at 13. And then at 14, we had moved because military brat, right? We moved a lot of different places. And we started a hot dog cart. So we used some of those earnings to then buy a hot dog cart, which then like 15, 16 later turned into a concession stand. And we were doing about $6,000 on weekends at these different events. And went into college, Penn State. We, throughout our first half of the year of going to college, we didn't have enough money for dorms. So, because of course, one, parent, and it was two of us, right? So, we slept out in our cars that first year. And throughout like tough times, we would do like positive things to keep us kind of going. So we said, hey, let's start another business. Let's start some online this time. And thinking about girls at the time, college and all, right? We then said, let's start a chocolate covered strawberry business, and let's ship chocolate covered strawberries all across the U.S. And we got about $25,000 together, and it worked out. About 2.5 years later, we had a multi-million-dollar business. It's called T-Berries, and we did very well. It was featured on Steve Harvey's show, Kiplinger magazine. Almost got our own TV show called The Berry Twins. It was supposed to be a chocolate version of Cake Boss, and I found a creative way to pitch that to the CEO of TLC and Discovery, but didn't quite get the show. But that then got us on the Steve Harvey show, Kiplinger magazine, many different things. And we had 3 stores, sold the concept to AFES. And I always wanted to be in tech. Went across the country, hopped in my car, drove across, and took my chances here now in Silicon Valley, San Jose area. And got a chance to work at some of the top tech companies, Apple, Google, and also got a chance to work at Facebook a while back. And throughout that time, my nephew texted me, asked me for funds, and that's when I started coming up with the concept of StoreCash, because I realized that when I told him I'll send the funds over to him and to download Venmo, he later then found out that he not only needs to be 18 years older, but he also needs a bank account. And I started seeing there was an opportunity here with Closed Loop, payments and a mix of that, allowing these people that are unbanked to be able to receive and use funds. And that's when StoreCash was born. Within the last year, we've gotten to Techstars. We've also partnered with Western Union, and we're working with them right now as we speak to provide this way for the unbanked to be able to receive and use funds on their platform for free. And we're going to be powering that system. We start our app, and it's going pretty well. And Marlon has been one of the most active and awesome investors in our round, along with a few others. It's been a great relationship so far. Just a little bit on me, Marlon. He can explain a little bit about him and how legendary he is in just the VC world, and also funding us as African American Black founders.
Well, I mean, given your background story and everything you're building with StoreCash, I should probably be interviewing you, right? I'll take the wins when I can get them. I appreciate you, brother. My background is a little bit different. I was actually born in Jamaica, and my parents moved us to the U.S. When I was fairly young, because they wanted me to have all the opportunities they didn't. And so, from a really young age, I took that to heart and just worked extremely hard to make sure I was taking advantage of every opportunity that they gave me. And so that translated or manifested into being a two-sport athlete, to, getting really good grades in schools, getting scholarships to go to certain schools. I ended up doing my undergraduate degree at Northeastern University, studied management information systems, and graduated and joined a startup. I was like employee number 12 at an enterprise software startup that I ultimately, helped move to the UK to serve the UK and Europe. And so that was a 3-year stint, working on everything from pre-sales to sales to implementation, customer support, maybe even swept the floors from time to time. But 3 years later, we sold the company to SAP, and it was at that point when I moved back to the US. And once I got back to the US, I did some soul searching. I was like, I don't think I want to be an operator. I'm not a Daricus. I'm a little bit different. So I went the other side of the spectrum and jumped into consulting. And first I was doing kind of, because I felt like consulting would give me like breath, right? Whereas when you're in a company, like that's your focus, right? Even though you're working maybe, across a number of verticals and business lines, it's still that company, that product or suite of products, etc. And so I was like, I'm going to do consulting because that's going to help me see everything. And first I was leading like post M&A integration projects for the Blackstone Group in their real estate division, basically creating what we call shared services organizations. These kind of new entities you develop where they would run everything out of, from payroll to all the back office operations, everything for all the companies that they're buying and holding until they can sell them at a premium. This just made them, run more effectively and efficiently during that holding point. And then that turned into more just straight strategy consulting with a focus on media and entertainment. So I worked with companies like Warner Music and McGraw-Hill and a number of others as they were trying to navigate what was becoming the ubiquitous nature of the internet. And initially, like, on the music side, piracy was the big thing. On the book selling side, bookstores, like physical bookstores, were starting to go out of business. And so, our role in there, my role, was to lead a team to help them to figure out, well, how do they make this new phenomenon a friend as opposed to an enemy? And that was a great, like 5 years that I spent doing that. And then came to another realization that I didn't actually want to be a consultant because there was something missing. And so kind of like, was it the story Goldilocks with the three bears, right? So the too small, too big, I needed something right in the middle. And so that right in the middle for me was venture capital. And what I was thinking, before I ever started being in venture was that I would be able to work with phenomenal entrepreneurs and CEOs like a Daricus on a daily basis. On a daily basis, I would be introduced to cutting edge, bleeding edge technology. I would be able to, kind of employ the strategic nature of my brain to help those founders and executives navigate, some of the major challenges to their businesses and help them grow it. And and this is probably the most important part because you couldn't get this in consulting, like actually having skin in the game, right? So being able to to be a part of something and not just dip in and dip out, right? It's it's up to a 10-year relationship when you make an investment in with a company, right? And so that's what I was looking for. And I was, okay, well, how do I get there? So the next step was I got to build a network in the space, and I could probably tighten up on some of my financial analysis skills. And so I decided to go back to business school. I went to Cornell. They gave me a full scholarship and a stipend, so essentially paid me to go to school there, which was amazing. But the best part is that there was a MBA-led pre-seed fund called BRV, and I was able to lead that fund as its CEO for the 2 years that I was there. And that set me up to start to build relationships, like real relationships within the venture space. Because instead of calling what I called at the time, real venture capitalists, because I think we were pretending and playing at during my time. No, it's real money, but it was the scale was just so much different. But instead of, calling them and asking them to meet me for coffee or can I pick your brain, I was actually saying, hey, I've got 61 talented Ivy League, like smart people at one of the world's greatest research institutions that's willing to go to work for you guys for free. Is that something that's interesting to you? In addition to that, right? In addition to that, here's some deals that we're looking at that we feel like would fit in, that are in your zone. And so those are the conversations I was having. And that led to ultimately me joining after graduating Intel Capital, which at the time was the largest and most active venture firm in the world. We were, as a team, global team, deploying anywhere between 200 and 500 million per year in Series A and Series B companies, right? Like there are funds that have 10-year life cycles that never see 200 million in capital deployed or capital under management. So it was a big organization and a great place to learn, really learn how to do venture investing. And so, one of the things that happened for me while I was there is they sponsored me to become a Kauffman Fellow, which is kind of the preeminent global fellowship in venture capital. And, unbeknownst to them at the time, it was a super eye-opening experience for me because what it taught me was that I didn't want to sit inside Intel Capital or any corporate VC or anyone else's venture firm for that matter for the rest of my career. I wanted to go out and start something that was my own, that allowed me to invest in all the types of companies and founders that I was passionate about and really wanted to go after. Folks, again, like Daricus and his company, StoreCash. And so that turned into me setting out to launch my first venture fund, which we called Cross Culture Ventures. Co-founded that with a gentleman named, and one of my best friends, Troy Carter, legendary music manager, prolific angel investor, and a great person. And so we built our first fund, invested in 43 companies, saw 5 of those companies exit, Probably the most notable was, Gimlet Media being purchased by Spotify. And and then now we're on to our next fund where, Troy's an LP in the fund, and I've partnered up with more folks. Former mayor of Washington, D.C., Adrian Fenty, former, super agent who now runs an epic media company focused on getting Black and brown faces onto the big screen and streaming platforms, Charles King, and Michael Palank, who is a former entrepreneur, former agent himself, and operator. And so our team has grown, our fund has grown, and we're continuing our mission to invest in incredible founders of all backgrounds that are building solutions in spaces that we really care about.
Awesome. Well, I didn't know half of that, but it just kind of explains a little bit more of why we work together well. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So I also think that we are discussing too more on the relationship between an investor and an entrepreneur. And I didn't know how important this was. Me, I was kind of like, at first, I'm get funding from whoever gives it to me, right? Especially as a Black founder, you assume that, it's going to be hard, which it is. It's very difficult. But actually liking who you work with and who's your investor, because your investor is very, you work very close. Me and Marlon work, I think, really close, probably the closest when it comes to investors. It's almost like having a friend for multiple years. You can't have somebody that you dislike or that you're wary whenever you get on the phone with them to tell them, hey, I'm having an issue, or hey, something's going wrong and we need to fix it. And they're not looking to help you fix those problems too. So, I think we should talk a little bit more on the relationship between an investor and an entrepreneur, and kind of explain a little bit of how that should look, what you should look for. There was, quickly here, another investor that was looking to invest in us. And it was just like last month or a month and a half ago. And we got in a little argument depending on how much information we should give based on this and that. And I was kind of like, okay, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out for us. And it's weird to me now, like a year ago, I would have been like, what am I doing? But, it was 100,000, 150,000. And I would have said, of course I need to take that. But now I think I better understand that, if it's frustrating now, it's going to be frustrating way throughout the whole relationship. So, if you could talk a little bit on that. And,
no, I think you're absolutely right. And I look at it, I look at it the same way, right? You gotta believe in the founder first and foremost. So there are things that I'm looking for in every founder. And if it's not there, then we can't work together. And one is just like, I need to see something. Like everyone says, yeah, I'm going to hustle. I work hard. I make it happen. But show me how you've done that in the past. Right. And here's where we might be a little, as a fund and firm, we might be a little bit different than others. Right. So when I say, show me how you've done that in the past, everyone always, jumps to, well, I ran, this kind of P&L at this company, or, I graduated top of my class at Harvard or Stanford, right? Well, those are accomplishments and achievements, or, I've started a couple companies, et cetera, and they've done well. Like, yes, those are commendable achievements, but they're not the only measure of grit and achievement, right? So I'm also looking at, well, taking Daricus' story, right? Someone at age 12 that started a business because his family actually needed it to happen, and started generating like real income for his family, and then turning that into something even larger, right? Where basically, given the situation with your dad, you're being raised by a single parent, right? Like that's grit, that's determination, that's hustle, that's achievement, and we got to make sure we don't discount that as well, and actually we got to make sure we embrace it and treat it for what it is. So I'm always going to look for that in our founders. I'm also going to look for something that's different about this founder that's unique to the opportunity, right? So what is it about your past experiences, whether that be professional experience or just lived experience, that gives you unique insight into this thing that you're building, right? Why are you the most qualified individual or team on this planet to make this thing and to make sure that it wins, right? That's really what I'm looking for. And then there's a level of humility, but there's also a level of self-confidence that has to be there, right? Like you gotta be a little crazy and be like, yeah, I'm gonna build this thing, right? It's gonna be a multi-billion-dollar company. We're gonna succeed, and we're starting from nothing, right? That, like, you gotta have a little crazy in you to think that's gonna happen, right? But then at the same time, you've got to have the right level of humility so that you can actually have real conversations with with your investors, with your employees, with your customers, like looking at shifts in the market and realizing that things are changing. It's going to be a little bit different than or much different than what we thought it was going to be, and being able to just accept that and make those shifts, right? These are all things that I'm looking for. How you communicate, with not just with the investor that you're trying to impress right now, but what about your team? What about your family members? What about your friends, right? Like what do they say about you? How do you communicate with them? How do those relationships go, right? These are all signals about the person and the team that we're going to be working with. And nobody wants to work with an asshole. Nobody wants to work with a know-it-all, right? So we're screening for all those things, and life is just too short, and there's so many opportunities out there, right? We see like 2,000 deals, in a year, and we might do 10, right? So there are choices, right? And so these are all the things that we look for, and that you got to have a strong working relationship. And the example you gave, I don't know who the investor was. You didn't tell me that story, but good on you for passing on it, right? Because it would get worse. And there are different ways to ask for certain types of information. And, you also have a response as CEO, you have a responsibility to your company to not give out too much of the secret sauce, particularly if we're not even at a term sheet level, yeah. Right? And so you gotta do that, and they've got to figure out ways to get enough information so that they can make the right decision, right? Good on you for not putting up with that. And I think founders in general have choices. There's a lot of capital out there. I mean, some capital is definitely better than others, right? From a strategic or just a helpful perspective. But you have choices, and oftentimes, in particular, Black founders forget that because it is so hard for us to raise capital, and so it's hard to look money in the face and say no, but you got to remember you have choices, and you're trying to build something, and if the people that you're bringing along with you aren't really coming along with you, aren't really your partners in this. And it's likely going to be a more difficult journey than it needs to be.
I can't agree with you 100%. Well, you know, me and you, we agree on a lot of things. So, yeah. Um, and that's another thing too. Like when I got a chance to meet you, Marlon, and I watched all your videos before. I didn't think I was actually going to meet you, but Ethan, the director from Techstars, told me, "Hey, I met this guy Marlon." I'm like, "Marlon Nichols?" Like, and he's like, "Yeah, Marlon Nichols." And you know, when I got an opportunity to like meet you in a lot of, you know, cases, whenever I'm doing research on a person or whatever, when I meet them, they're different. You know, they know, I guess, that they have buzz around them. And when I got an opportunity to meet you, you know, I think we were 5 minutes late, right? 5 or 10 minutes late. And you were like, "Oh, it's fine. Let's just get started." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then, you know, as we were talking, I just think there was just some synergy there, and I think that we both kind of felt it. And I said that meeting went great. And my CTO, he was like, "I don't know. I think we could have did this." I think it went great, and you know, apparently it went great because we're now working with each other. But you got to feel that whenever you're working with investor. I felt that also with Shantae Spencer. We got on the phone first time. He was asking me a few questions. And then next thing you know, we're on the phone for 3 hours, you know, and we're just talking through different things like that. And there's a friendship there. And, you know, if you're an entrepreneur without funds right now, you're like, yeah, that's cool. Sounds great. I need money right now. But it matters. It definitely matters. So I would urge, entrepreneurs to make sure that they have good synergy with their investors because you're going to go through ups and downs. And your investors are there to help you more so than say, well, how much are you doing? How much money are you? What are you? What more can we get from you? How much more, information? How much more funding? How much more can we get from you? More so than the relationship. And Marlon actually is the one that taught me what a good investor looks like. Because as we've raised our first, round outside of Techstars, I've seen the relationship between me and Marlon. And I said, that's what I want from here on out. But our relationship is more of, hey, how can I help? What can I do? Hey, I know this cool thing happening over here. Want me to put you in contact with this person? Hey, I know an investor might be interested here. Let me put you in contact. Are you having issues with this? I may know a guy. Those are the type of investors that you want. More mentor, advisor, like investor kind of relationship. So I guess for that topic, I would urge you to focus on making sure you find that. And you will. And even with my story, I made it a point whenever I went into an investor meeting to tell my story. And it's not that I want anyone to feel any sympathy or anything, anything about like my story to please give me funds because of my story. But I wanted to see if they could understand a situation like that and how I counteracted a negative with a positive. And how, if you understand entrepreneurship and if you understand good entrepreneurs, you would understand why that story matters. And a lot of, white VCs saw that story and heard the story and they're like, okay, how much are you making? And they didn't really get it. And I said, okay, this is probably not going to work out because they don't really understand, especially at this stage, what you're going to need in order to get past this. Stay true to who you are. Let people know who you are. And if you know you can do it, try to portray that throughout the introduction with that investor, and you'll find the ones that kind of match your vibe. So that's a little bit of my advice, and kind of go on to, I guess, the next stage of this. I think we should discuss too about how do you go about, like, if you have no funding and you're looking for investment and you don't know how to go about that. There's a few different ways, because it was a couple of months in between for at least us, because when I first started the first business, Tea Berries, there was no investment. I didn't even know that there was a pool of people that would give you money to actually run business until I did more of a research. But then when I started figuring out, like, investment and investors and different things like that, I guess what would be the advice for people that don't have investment and that are looking for investors? I would urge to go through and find, like, accelerators, because just like Marlon was saying earlier, that when you were looking into going into becoming an investor and having your own firm, you need to network. And sometimes when you hear about networking, you're thinking about these events that you don't really get much out of. The way you kind of want to go about it is to find out where you want to be. Who are those people? What are the steps that they kind of went through in order to get where they were? And when I was going through those steps, I saw at the beginning of these stages, YC, Techstars, 500 startups, all these accelerators that they went through. And then they seemed to get access to all these different people. So that's where I started my journey. Now other people can get opportunity to meet a Marlon and get, investment. But it's very few and in between. I would recommend going through an accelerator. And I also want to ask you, Marlon, as we kind of went through the accelerator and then talked with you afterwards, like, how did that change your perspective on the investment?
So, and I see a question in here about friends and family rounds. Yes, get money early so that you can stop working on whatever else you're working on and focus as much as you can on this new project. As well as it's going to be that capital is probably going to be the cheapest capital that you'll ever get, right? Because there are people that are close to you that believe in you. And you're so early on that it's going to be, the price is going to be, pretty low. But anyway, accelerators are great for certain companies. It's not the right path for everyone. And we've worked really closely with, Techstars, 500 startups, and Y Combinator. We've invested, alongside, before them in some, after them in some, etc. And what my take on it is, you've got to figure out what each of those are good at, right? Some are going to be really good at helping you with business development. So if your company's at a stage where you built the product, you know exactly what segment of the market you're going after, and you just need to, start generating sales and getting introductions to potential clients, etc. There are certain accelerators that will excel at that, and you should look at those. If you are earlier in your journey and you haven't completed the product yet, and you're looking to maybe hire some engineers or work with some engineers or do things like that so you can get the product to a viable state, there are accelerators that are good at that, right? And then there are accelerators that will help you raise money, right? So if you've done the other two things and now you just need to bring in more capital at increased valuations, well, there are accelerators that can help you do that. And so I think it's really important to truly internalize and understand where you are in your company's life cycle and your journey, and then do the research to figure out who are the best organizations for you to work with at this stage in your life cycle. And then you got to make the hard decision of whether or not, taking in 150 or 200K for 6-7% of your business for that value that they're going to add is truly worth it to you, right? So these are all questions that you have to ask yourself and answer, but it comes down to research. And not just like reading stuff on the internet, like talking to founders that have gone through all of these programs. I always say the best resource that founders have are other founders, right? They live through it. They're living through it. They've raised money from the people that you probably want to raise money from, or have been told no by those people, etc. Right? Those are your best resources. And I can't tell you how often founders just try to like skip that, right? And go straight to investors. That's the best companies that come into our portfolio usually come from the recommendation from founders that we've worked with before. And if Daricus sends me an email or calls me and is like, I met this founder and I think they're incredible. I think the thing that they're building is sensational. And it's the next hit, but the founder is amazing. I'm going to make time to meet with that founder, right? Because I trust Daricus's opinion, right? And I know the kind of founder that he is. So I'm definitely going to take that meeting. So again, I just think they are your best allies. Definitely start with them. In terms of finding venture investors outside of accelerators, et cetera, it's still just research. It's research and it's pounding the pavement. I remember I was with another one of our founders, Deshaun Amira, on stage at another conference, Revolt, Diddy, and we were taking questions from the audience, and someone stood up and was like, "Man, I've talked to like 20 investors and I keep getting no's. This is hard." And Deshaun was like, "You talk to 20? Try 200." Right? Like now, once you get there, now you're starting to do something, right? So it's like I mentioned earlier, right? 2,000 deals, maybe do 10, right? Where I end up saying no a lot, and no to some really great founders, right? Who aren't necessarily the right fit for us at that point in time. So just learn from each experience, get better with every pitch meeting, refining your story. Try to get. And I know we're reluctant to give detailed feedback sometimes to founders, but try to get what you can, out of that. And then also, practice with other entrepreneurs and tap into their networks.
If you do know someone that could give you an intro, huge. If you're cold calling, the odds are very slim, but the intros from other investors, huge. You at least get a meeting in most cases. So yeah, if you can do that, I think that's a pretty good advice, and you would probably give better advice on that too, Marlon, because I'm not on that side of things. I think we have about 10 more minutes, and I want to get to questions and advice, if we can give it. Mark?
Hey guys, thanks a ton for hosting this event. It's been tremendously helpful. Grateful for your time. My question is, how do you help the great founders you say no to, given your time constraints and limits? Do you recommend particular blogs? Do you recommend particular research resources, or How do you do that?
Yeah, you're right. Time is short, right? And so, but if I've spent like real time with that founder, then I feel like I have an obligation to return something to them, right? So if we've had a number of phone conversations and we've started to get to know each other, but I get to a no, then when I get to that no, I'm going to send you a very thoughtful email. I'm probably also going to have a phone conversation with you to tell you why we're moving on, and to if it makes sense, here are some other organizations that I think you might be a better fit for. So I'll do things like that. But if I get a pitch deck, or we get a pitch deck and we review it, and it's just not a good fit, and that's our only interaction, well, we're not going to spend a half an hour crafting this ultra thoughtful response as to why we pass. It's like it's either too early, it's not a good fit for whatever reason, etc. And we're gonna move on. But again, if we spend time with you, then I feel an obligation to give you like real feedback.
And also with that, I don't have much time because we're a super small team and we're moving pretty fast. But Daricus at StoreCashApp.com. If you want to swing something by and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'll give you honest feedback. Just be ready for the honest feedback, but I'll also give you feedback on how to make it better and the way you can move kind of forward with it. So, like as much as I can help, I'm going to try. So email me, Daricus at StoreCashApp.com, and I'll do what I can to try to help. Christopher.
Hi, can you hear me and see me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, first, Marlon, Daricus, it's been awesome. I feel really inspired and empowered. My name's Chris. I'm a student at Johns Hopkins, and I'm a tech founder currently leading a pre-seed. I'm especially inspired by the way you guys talk about how often people fail and how they bounce back from that failure. So from either of you, or hopefully both of you, I'd love to hear a story of maybe there was a founder that approached you. It might not have been a right fit at the time for whatever reason. They took that feedback, iterated on it, and maybe you saw them succeed later on, or you were even able to partner with them later on.
Sure. We have a number of them. Melissa Hanna from Mommy is one example. When we first met, she was so early in the development of the company. And it was the business was very dependent on one-off consumer like sales, and so my feedback was look, we need to make this more institutionalized, right? I need to see for this type of business, I need to see better repeatable revenue models, and you also have this more of a brick and mortar feel of physical kind of engagement kind of a thing, and it should be more digital. And then we had spent a lot of time with Melissa because she's phenomenal, but couldn't get there, right? For those reasons, and so I explained that to her, and it wasn't a pleasant conversation because she was looking for a yes at the time, and we couldn't get there. And so what I did, I introduced her to other investors. I introduced her to Arlen Hamilton, for instance, who invests earlier than we do. She invested, a couple other people invested, and it was about a year later, Melissa reached out. She was like, "We did everything you said," and we dug in, and she actually did. And then we had a one-on-one conversation. I said, "All right, great. We're going to lead the next round that you're doing."
Nice.
And she's gone on to raise, significantly more money than what we put in at the time. And to this day, I work with her pretty closely on her board. So that's one example.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't invested in companies, so I probably don't know much, but
Awesome.
I have seen a couple of companies, be passed on, and they've raised millions of dollars and done pretty well. But yeah, I probably.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the question, guys.
Nice to meet you.
I used to live somewhat close to there, Arundel area, Fort Meade. So,
yeah, I've been all over the place. Like, oh, Marlon, I'm from Kingston, by the way. Like, born and raised, I'm Jamaican as well. So it's great to see you. But
I was born in St. Andrews Hospital.
Oh, wow. We'd have a lot to talk about.
All right.
Hey,
Thank you. How's it, everybody?
Good.
That was an amazing conversation. Marlon, we all appreciate you as founders and what you do for the community and your honest feedback, your honest insights. And I really hope people were taking notes. I'm co-hosting this, but again, we're all founders, so we're just here writing notes as we're listening. And Daricus, your story is truly inspiring. I heard you say Fort Meade. I grew up in Columbia, so not too far.
Oh, okay.
If you all have any parting words of wisdom or anything like that while that button's popping up for everybody, feel free. And if not, thanks again.
Yeah, I would just say, thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully, some of this has been useful for some people, at least one. And if the only advice that I ever give to founders is go ahead and build, right? Because no one can ever take that away from you, right? Whatever you build and you achieve is yours and cannot be denied. So do that, and everything else will eventually fall into place. Obviously, with work and hustle.
Again, I'll go ahead, Darren.
It's great Marlon said that, because my co-founder, I've done this a few times, but my co-founder, this is like his first time. He's very smart. He's awesome. He's CTO. But he was saying that, hey, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? I said, well, let's just keep moving, and they'll fall in place. And now he says, oh, Daricus, don't worry, he'll fall in place. So just keep building, just like Marlon was saying, and your day will come.
Perfect. Well, thank you to you both.